Venus, in astrological symbolism, is often reduced to a shorthand for love, beauty, or pleasure. But such simplifications obscure the essential psychic depth and philosophical complexity of what Venus actually governs. Venus is not merely about romance or appearance. It is the function through which we evaluate worth, engage with aesthetics, and form meaningful attachments. It governs the principle of attraction, both in the literal and metaphorical sense, the force by which we are drawn to people, ideas, objects, and experiences we consider valuable or beautiful. More than just the planet of love, Venus rules over value formation, aesthetic perception, social reciprocity, and relational intelligence. It is the symbolic architecture that shapes how we relate to others, to ourselves, and to the world, not only through emotion, but through appreciation, harmony, and ethical consideration. This script explores Venus as a universal principle of attraction, evaluation, and relational aesthetics. It offers a psychological, symbolic, and philosophical investigation of Venus as an essential structure within the human psyche, one that shapes how we define worth, seek harmony, and experience intimacy. At its most fundamental level, Venus governs value, how we determine what is desirable, beautiful, pleasurable, meaningful, or worthy of pursuit. This valuation process is not purely economic or material. It is aesthetic, ethical, and psychological. Venus asks, what do I find beautiful? What feels good? What brings harmony? What do I believe is worth my time, energy, and affection? The Venus function is active whenever we choose between options, not based on necessity or logic, Mercury, nor instinct, Mars, but based on preference. It governs the felt sense of resonance. This speaks to me, this feels right, this fits. Our Venus function shapes our personal value system, not our beliefs or ideologies per se, but our internal scale of emotional and aesthetic resonance. What we like, what we prefer, and what we gravitate toward are expressions of our inner Venusian compass. Venus governs our aesthetic intelligence, the capacity to perceive, respond to, and create harmony, balance, and beauty. This is not limited to the arts or design, but extends to all areas of life where form meets feeling. This includes taste and style, sensitivity to color, texture, proportion, and symmetry, appreciation for elegance, simplicity, or sensuality, the desire for visual and emotional balance. Venus is the symbolic eye that sees through harmony. It detects dissonance and seeks resolution, not as a rational exercise, but as a perceptual and emotional imperative. It is what causes discomfort in the presence of ugliness or clutter, and joy in the presence of coherence, grace, or symmetry. Importantly, this aesthetic sense is personal. What one person finds beautiful, another may not. The Venus function is uniquely calibrated to each individual's experience of sensory and emotional harmony. Venus is the function of magnetism, of being drawn to and drawing others toward us. It governs the subtle forces of attraction that underlie social, emotional, and even intellectual connection. This is not mere physical desire, more aligned with Mars, but a nuanced interplay of appreciation, resonance, and compatibility. Venus attraction operates through shared values, mutual aesthetic sensibility, emotional compatibility, energetic harmony. To understand Venus is to understand the invisible gravitational field of human connection. Why are we drawn to certain people, places, art forms, or even ideas? Venus answers, because something in them mirrors or awakens something valuable in us. Attraction, in this sense, is not arbitrary. It is an act of recognition. Venus reveals not just what we want, but who we are, through what we are drawn toward. Venus governs the relational architecture of the psyche, how we form bonds, sustain intimacy, and navigate the subtleties of emotional reciprocity. Where the moon governs attachment through emotional memory and nurturing, Venus governs attachment through affection, resonance, and mutual enjoyment. Venus structures how we give and receive affection, understand beauty and pleasure within relationship, maintain equilibrium in interpersonal dynamics, experience appreciation, kindness, and mutual regard. This is not limited to romantic love. Venus governs the entire field of affiliative bonds, friendships, alliances, and even collaborative partnerships. Wherever there is mutual enjoyment, shared values, or aesthetic harmony, Venus is at work. At its healthiest, Venus fosters reciprocity, gentleness, and empathy. At its most unconscious, Venus can veer into people-pleasing, aesthetic narcissism, or the idealization of others at the cost of truth. Pleasure is a Venusian domain, but not in a hedonistic or superficial sense. Venus governs pleasure as an affirmation of harmony. It is the deep psychic satisfaction that arises when we are in resonance with our environment, our body, or another person. Venusian pleasure includes sensory pleasure, taste, touch, sound; emotional pleasure, companionship, intimacy; aesthetic pleasure, art, nature, elegance; intellectual pleasure, elegant ideas, graceful arguments. Pleasure, in the Venusian sense, is not escapist, it is integrative. It reconnects us to what feels good, what feels right, and what feels beautiful. It reminds us that life is not only to be endured or analyzed but also enjoyed. A wounded Venus may block pleasure through guilt, shame, or disassociation. A healthy Venus restores the body and heart to their rightful role in evaluating experience. One of Venus's most overlooked functions is its relationship to self-worth. Because Venus governs value in general, it also governs how we assign value to ourselves. This includes self-esteem, self-respect, deservingness, internalized appreciation. The Venus function reflects how we feel about ourselves, not in a moral or cognitive sense, but in terms of felt value. Do I believe I am lovable, attractive, worthy, or appreciated? When Venus is integrated, one's sense of worth is stable, intrinsic, and not overly dependent on external validation. When Venus is compromised, one may oscillate between self-devaluation and excessive need for affirmation. Venus teaches that self-worth is not earned by performance, but affirmed through inner alignment with one's values and pleasures. While often seen as purely aesthetic, Venus also has an ethical dimension. It governs how we treat others in the context of relationship, not through rules or ideology, as Saturn or Jupiter might, but through empathic reciprocity. Venus asks, am I being fair? Am I honoring the beauty and dignity of this other person? Am I contributing to harmony or distorting it? This is a relational ethic, based not on doctrine but on attunement. It includes the capacity to respect boundaries, to share joy, to give without controlling, and to receive without entitlement. Venus is not only about love, it is about the quality of how we love, and whether our connections honor the intrinsic worth of all involved. Venus governs not only personal affection but also social intelligence, the ability to navigate human dynamics with grace, tact, and subtlety. This includes reading emotional cues, mediating social tension, expressing appreciation and validation, creating a harmonious atmosphere. In this sense, Venus is critical for diplomacy, negotiation, and community building. It allows one to foster goodwill, build rapport, and reduce interpersonal friction, not through manipulation, but through attunement and mutual regard. Venus gives us the capacity to sense the emotional aesthetics of a room, to know when to speak, when to listen, when to smooth, and when to shine. Beyond physical or emotional desire, Venus governs what depth psychologists call symbolic eros, the connective tissue of consciousness that seeks union, resonance, and synthesis. Eros here does not mean sexual love, but the urge to unify, to harmonize disparate parts into a whole. It is the capacity to integrate, to soften boundaries, and to find coherence where there was separation. This archetypal eros is the impulse behind artistic creation, emotional intimacy, intellectual collaboration, spiritual longing. Venus is the psyche's connective principle. It resists fragmentation. It seeks relationship over isolation, harmony over dissonance, beauty over brute functionality. In this sense, Venus is not weak or superficial. It is a profound agent of psychic healing and social coherence. One of Venus's challenges is the tendency toward idealization, to project one's sense of beauty or value onto others, often without full awareness. This can manifest as romantic projection, aestheticized denial, attraction to superficial charm, over-identification with what pleases. Idealization is not inherently bad, it often fuels inspiration and connection. But when unchecked, it can distort perception, lead to disillusionment, or prevent authentic relationship. The task of Venus is not to stop valuing others, but to see clearly while still loving deeply. To love what is real, not what is imagined. To honor beauty without becoming blinded by it. Venus is a creative function, not in terms of productivity or innovation, which belong more to Mercury or Mars, but in the ability to bring beauty into being. This includes artistic expression, styling and design, beautifying space and experience, creating emotional resonance. Creation through Venus is not forced, it flows from alignment. It is a natural outpouring of beauty from within. Whether expressed in a painting, a gesture, a sentence, or a room, Venus brings aesthetic coherence into the world. This creative force is not separate from relational or ethical values. Venus creates beauty in the same way it creates harmony, by aligning with what feels true, tender, and whole. The development of Venus involves moving from external dependence to internal sovereignty. Early expressions of Venus may rely on others for affirmation, beauty, or worth. Over time, the mature Venus learns to define its own values, cultivate intrinsic worth, choose relationships based on resonance, not need, create rather than consume beauty. This evolution allows one to move from needing love to embodying love, not just in the romantic sense, but in the aesthetic, ethical, and relational sense. A well-developed Venus does not chase harmony, it radiates it. Venus is not merely a symbol of love or beauty. It is a foundational psychological function, the inner system through which we experience value, relate to others, and create beauty in our world. It shapes how we attach, how we appreciate, how we evaluate, and how we express affection. It governs taste and tenderness, fairness and feeling, harmony and heart. To cultivate Venus is not to become more romantic or indulgent, it is to become more aligned with the felt realities of connection, appreciation, and inner worth. In a culture that often prizes utility, velocity, and abstraction, Venus offers a counterweight. The intelligence of pleasure, of slowness, of attention, of resonance. It reminds us that life is not only a problem to be solved, but a beauty to be perceived. Venus teaches that love is not only an emotion, it is an aesthetic, a value, and an ethic. And through that ethic, we are invited to live with more grace, more gratitude, and more genuine connection.